Welcome to The Dojo, a marketing news podcast by Exposure Ninja. This week, we're talking about how another D2C brand has gone bust after a mega marketing spree, and how Black Friday sales are set to be £9 billion this weekend in the UK alone. We'll also be giving you a little bit of an update on the Wicked story that we talked about last week. Let's get into it. So, Tim, what is your story this week? Tell us all about it.
My story is that sadly, another D2C brand has gone bust amid a sort of a mega marketing spree, really. This week we found out very sadly that All Plants, which is a sort of a vegan or plant-based meal delivery company in the UK, has filed for administration. And a lot of people are really sad about this. It's a fairly big company, quite a lot of staff. And it's I'd say it's one of the most, if not the most prominent of the sort of meal delivery companies, at least around London. Loads of advertising. You see their ads everywhere. They've done loads of digital as well. And I think this has been a bit of a tough year for a lot of these D2C brands in general. There are some real success stories. So we're going to be looking at Hims and Hers shortly on the Exposure Ninja channel as an example of a D2C brand that's grown really quickly and is seeing amazing success with their marketing. But I think what's happening is over the last couple of years, there's been a bit of a reckoning, and a lot of these brands that took on a lot of investment and really spent huge amounts of money buying market share have started to, I guess, hit a bit of a wall, and reality has started to sink in, with some of the customer acquisition costs proving to just be a little bit too high for them to maintain. So obviously, when a company goes into administration, there's plenty of reasons that could be the case, and we're not saying that they've just over marketed. But what I do like to do is when a company goes into administration, you typically go back and look at their accounts in previous years to see the shape of the growth. And then because of all the tools that we've got at our disposal these days, we can also then go and look at the marketing that they've been doing during that period to see, does it square with their expectations and does it match the reality of the business? Comparing the accounts with the marketing and saying, okay, does this make sense? And sadly, in Allbirds' case, it really does not. This is a real important lesson for all marketers that you can't outmarket bad numbers. But let's take a look at exactly what trying to do that would look like. So I've got a bit of a tour of some different tools today. And the reason that this is really important for all marketers, not just, business owners or D2C people, is because I think this shows how important knowing your numbers, knowing your customer acquisition costs are, and also making sure that you're not getting to a point where you're just pushing silly money into marketing. Because I think, if I'm going to be completely honest, if all plants had come to Exposure Ninja and said, we've got these plans to spend this amount of money, we probably would have pushed back because it simply doesn't make sense. And I know, Jess, you've had situations where, you've had companies advertising to you that you're clearly not interested in. They're continuing to advertise to you over and over and over again. And really the amount that some of these companies are plowing into, particularly social media ads, they're going to be going past the point of saturation. So I don't know what the data looks like for them, but certainly it seems pretty wild. Um, the last filed accounts we have for Allbirds are for a 7-month period ending in March 2023. So it's a little bit historic, but we can't always see the advertising that they were doing in exactly that period, but we can see what it looked like in 2023 to start making some assessments. So in that 7-month period ending at the end of March 2023, they did £4 million, British pounds, in revenue. Their cost of sales was 2.6 million, meaning their gross profit was 1.54 million. So they basically had 1.54 million to spend on overhead, sales, and marketing if they wanted to at least break even, right? They didn't. They spent 10.8 million on overheads, including marketing. So they're losing a lot of money. They're losing about twice as much as they have in revenue. So clearly the business model is unsustainable. They were obviously looking to, build market share and presumably increase the number of customers they've got, which would decrease the cost to service each customer. Let's take a look at some of the marketing that they were doing during 2023 to see where that might have gone. So here we're on the Ad Clarity tool inside SEMrush. You can get a free trial of Ad Clarity at exposure.ninja/wow. This is an amazing tool. It shows you all of the spend and all of the ad campaigns that people have been running on social. So you will have seen the Meta ad library where you can see all the ads. What Ad Clarity allows you to do is see actually how much they've spent on those ads and how many impressions they've had when they were running as well. So it's like the Meta ad library, but on massive steroids. So this is a really useful tool to go and look at your competitors and seeing what they're doing. So we can see, for example, that in October and November and December 2023, all plants were spending around 90K a week on social media ads. Okay, 90K a week. So it's about £70,000 a week. So remember, their entire gross profit is 1.54, and they were spending £70,000 a week on social media ads, which is something like 3.5 million a year. So they're spending like double their gross profit just on their ads. Okay. And that's just on social. That's not including search. That's not including out of home, all of the other types. And so this is real, like insane amounts of social media spending. And that's just the budget. That's not including the cost of producing the ad creative, which they're using a lot of UGC. So it's not going to be huge costs of ad creative, but still someone's going to be charging a fair whack to manage that, whether they're doing it in house or whether they're doing it with an agency. Um, and by the way, this is after the grocer reported that they'd cut their marketing spend by 85% in that year, right? So they're still spending like huge amounts more than they're making on marketing after cutting their marketing spend 85% year on year. Now, I'd say there's other aspects of their digital marketing where they could have potentially got a much higher ROI. So, for example, with their SEO, there's actually a fair amount of search traffic or search queries that they could be relevant for. But we see actually what they've done with their content strategy. And for those who are listening rather than watching, I'm on SEMrush just looking at their organic visibility for back in November 2023. The pages that are ranking, their content strategy is it's mostly the pages that are bringing in traffic and mostly their blog pages. And these blogs are on topics like, are gherkins good for you? Are crumpets healthy? Is Weetabix healthy? Is corn flour gluten-free? Now, these are informational terms that I would argue have very little to do with all plants who are selling meal kits to people who are short on time. So is Weetabix healthy? You could say, well, yes, that might be someone who's looking for healthy foods. Maybe we could get them onto a meal delivery kit, but it's quite a stretch, right? I would say that's maybe not even top of funnel. That's like it's in the sky. It's a long way away. The conversion rate on that is going to be as close as you can get to zero in the world of digital marketing. And there is loads and loads of this stuff. Is HP brown sauce suitable for vegans? Is tempura vegan? What crisps are vegan? Are vegan sausages healthy? Like, there's just loads of this, and it's the majority of their organic traffic is this stuff. The majority of the content they've been putting out is either these blogs answering these basic questions, which, by the way, are all going to be eaten by AI overviews anyway. They do get traffic to their homepage. A lot of their traffic is branded traffic. And I would have loved to see them take on some more health related or time management type topics, which might indicate that somebody is looking to buy the product that they're selling, not just getting organic traffic for the sake of it. So it looks like a lot of their traffic is really mainly irrelevant. Organic traffic is their primary source of traffic, bringing them out 46% of their total traffic. But yeah, it's largely irrelevant, unfortunately. A lot of their traffic is non-branded, so 59%. But as I've said, the vast majority of this looks to be completely irrelevant. So the other thing that we'd look at would be something like PPC advertising, because PPC advertising, particularly in this space, which is quite crowded, could have lots and lots of different opportunities. You could bid on very commercial keywords like meal delivery services or vegan meal kits, or even their competitors who are themselves doing lots of advertising. If somebody is searching for Thrive or Lions Prep or one of their competitors, they're in the market. and they could be poached by All Plants if All Plants can go to that customer with a very clear reason to switch over. But it looks like their paid search is a complete afterthought, right? We're talking about spending less than £600 a month in December, which would be their really busy season, compared to 70K a week on social. And they're targeting their own brand name, but then they're targeting vegan food, which is such a broad, it's basically an informational term. There's no commercial intent behind that at all, really. Vegan, vegetarian meals delivered, yes, that's good, but I'd love to see loads more of these. So, what it looks like to me is this is a company that has great branding, like their branding and all their look and feel and everything is amazing. Their product photography is beautiful. But this looks to me like they've gone straight to the paid social D2C playbook. They've poured in way more cash than they're making. I don't know, obviously, I don't know what their customer acquisition cost is, but the fact that they're losing double their revenue means it's probably not positive. And I think this is just a really solid reminder to all of us marketers that even if the KPIs that we're being set aren't ROI, we need to have an eye on ROI. Marketing should be a revenue generator, not a cost sink, and certainly not a cost black hole like it might have appeared to be here. So really sad that All Plants have gone. I no way want to dig this out. I just think we as marketers need to be savvy and we need to be thinking about the basic fundamentals. We need to understand our numbers. We need to know what we can afford to pay for a customer. We need to be thinking about how we can increase that customer lifetime. And if the numbers don't stack up, we don't just keep going. We can't scale our way to ROI. ROI has to be there from the beginning because in reality, customer acquisition costs will probably only increase as you go. So you can't outmarket bad economics. Jess, Charlie, I'd love to know your thoughts.
I think on this one, there's a big trap with sunk cost fallacy, I imagine, and making that judgment call as to when you've sunk enough costs that you actually need to do something different. And marketers have to be really, really on it with not falling into the trap of sunk cost fallacy because something like this, it can so easily happen as a result of not being on top of those numbers or thinking social's eventually going to pay off for us if we keep going and we keep going. Well, we've already put this much in. Are we going to stop now? And I think one of the really important things for marketers is to be able to put guardrails around what they're doing and decide this is what I'm testing, this is what I'm experimenting, I'm going with it for this long. And these are the, even if it's not an ROI, these are the progress markers or these are the figures that I need to see to know this is working. And it's better to do that before you throw all of your funds into it so that you're not in that emotional situation of having spent whatever it is you've spent so far, and you can logically go back to the benchmarks you put in place. And I think the thing for marketers and businesses like this who are doing that is there's no shame in deciding to pull the plug on a marketing channel at some point or switch strategy, because even if one marketing channel is working for some period of time, trends are going to change, things change, the market's going to change, the economic situation changes, all sorts of things might change about who you're targeting and how marketing works. That even if something is successful for you, knowing when to say, okay, maybe this isn't what we want to do in 2025, maybe this isn't where we need to go, maybe this has been working, but it's time to pivot. Being able to have those conversations and make those decisions, you need the data at the back of that to then make that judgment call.
Yeah, I think, Charlie, one of the things I was thinking that you've kind of reinforced in a way is that they potentially had a lot of success with social to start with, and then maybe also struggling to let go of that. Because I think sometimes you're like, wow, this got us great ROI to begin with. If we just put a bit more money in, if we just put a bit more money in, we'll be able to replicate that. And I think maybe there's been a lot of like heavy focus on just social as opposed to doing SEO or even doing search, paid search. And unfortunately, that's come to bite them. But that is a lot of money that they're spending on social media ads that could be put into so many different exciting marketing initiatives. And it feels like, yeah, they just really lost their way.
I mean, I've been in these D2C groups where, and I don't know if this is the dynamic that was in All Plants, but I've been in these D2C groups where the weekly Facebook spend is a badge of honor. It's more of a badge of honor than the revenue or the profit in the business. This is a sign that you're playing at a big level. And we're really proud that we're dumping 50, 100K into Facebook. And I think that, I mean, that's great. If you've got an ROI of 2 to 1, then happy days. Dump 100 million into Facebook every week. But if the numbers aren't stacking up, you're sort of, yeah, you can't scale zeros. They're not necessarily scaling zeros. In this case, they're scaling actually a kind of a -1. So you just got to be really careful, haven't you? And I think there's as an agency, we have a responsibility. We feel a responsibility to our clients. We track the ROI of all of the marketing channels that we do. We track this on a spreadsheet and we report it every quarter. And we are panicking internally if we're not seeing things going in the right direction. And we'll not be afraid to say to a client, like, we need to change direction here or something's not working. And I think that's a really important role of any sort of external agency or consultant or anything like that, is to be that reality check. And it takes discipline because you might be saying, actually spend less money with us here and maybe you can do this thing instead. But it's really important to listen to those messages when they come through. Um,
One of
it's
the other
really sad, isn't it?
One of the other things I thought was interesting about what you were saying, Tim, was how top of funnel they went with some of those keywords that they went after. And I imagine something that marketers might be thinking now is, how far is too far? Like, how top is too top of funnel? How do you know where you want to focus in on? Is there any advice that you would give to someone who's thinking, like, how informational should I be going?
I think this has got to be about priorities, right? Hasn't it? I think if you're ranking well for your core terms and you're ranking well for mid funnel terms, then by all means, go top of funnel. But if if you're not ranking particularly well for vegetarian meal delivery, and you decide to write a blog post called "Are Twiglets Vegan?", then your priorities are kind of in the wrong place, because that's anybody can answer that question, and Google AI overviews will answer that question. So that only makes sense. We look at HubSpot, for example, as the sort of kings and queens of top of funnel. HubSpot will try and rank for productivity software or something that's completely outside their space, but might be searched for by someone who may one day have a job where they may be in an organization that may buy HubSpot. Well, that's fair enough because they're dominating everything else. So why not? But I think in these cases, you've got to sort your core first before you start sort of climbing that top of funnel ladder, really.
Yeah, the last thing I actually wanted to mention on them as well is one of the reasons I'm aware of all plants is because I wanted a vegan alternative to like HelloFresh. So I looked them up and then they were suggested, and I didn't convert because I didn't want ready-made meals. I wanted meal delivery kits. So part of me wonders if they're maybe ranking slightly for the wrong thing, and that maybe they've seen their competitors as maybe like Gusto and HelloFresh. I could be speaking completely wrong here, but it was just interesting to me that when I made that search, they were appearing alongside companies like Gusto and like I think Planthood, as opposed to other meal delivery kit, like sorry, other like pre-made meal kits. So I do wonder if maybe they needed to do some repositioning there. Because even when I went on their website now, the above the fold section still kind of looks like HelloFresh. It's got that sort of images of the meals. These are the meals we have available on a rotation. And I wonder if they actually needed to be doing more education about what they are. But that could just be a totally me thing because Tim, obviously you knew their competitors and you were straight on it with what they do and what they're all about. But I do wonder if maybe they had some like crossover with some products that weren't the same. So when people are searching for something like this, and I also saw that they were doing running paid search on like vegetarian meal delivery, but not vegan meal delivery, but were on vegan food, which just seems to be a very it's a lot of bizarre choices. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate because their branding looks stunning. And from the reviews, the quality of the food seems to be fantastic. But yeah, I think Charlie's dead on it there with, saying that they probably got hung up on the wrong things and maybe were scared because they'd spent so much money on social and just figured one day it would pay off.
And I think there is a final point, which is along what you're saying there, Jess, where especially if you're in a really crowded market like this. I was listening to someone who is um, they're a non-exec for private equity firm, and the businesses that they acquire and that they buy, one of the main things they work on is the proposition. And it's really interesting to hear private equity talk about that, because we almost view that as a marketing thing. We handle that for clients that don't have a clear proposition when they come into Exposure Ninja. We're like, all right, let's do your branding and your positioning. And here's private equity saying, when we buy a multi-$100 million company, we actually work on the proposition. And I was thinking about all plants and how, against all of the competitors that offer, I guess, similar sorts of things, how do you stand out? They've got great branding, and that's one way to stand out, but it's not as much of a moat as it could be. And I don't see anything on this site which tells me, oh, do you know what? I am with another one, but I need to come with all plants because they are X. Like, what's the story there? And I'm just not seeing that. So then you end up with price comparison, or just pure familiarity or something like that. And that's a really difficult and expensive way to compete, versus if there is some really clear story, oh, we use these types of chefs, or all our food is from this source, or all our packaging is completely biodegradable, or we're carbon neutral, or whatever it might be. There has to be something that makes you different, because then your marketing messages gets more traction, because people see that message and like, oh yeah, cool, I get it, I understand why it's them, rather than just, oh, here's another one of these meal companies that's advertising to me again. Trying to get them on familiarity by just pummeling them with impressions until they eventually relent.
And as
So
we can see, that does not work. At least definitely not in this situation.
yeah.
Charlie, I think we're ready to move on to your story, so tell us all about it.
Sure. So I'm picking up on Black Friday, which is predicted to be 9 billion this weekend, and that's just in the UK. So that's 9 billion Great British pounds, which is they're working out an average spend of about 343 per person, and reckoning now that Black Friday, which is of American origin, is now in the UK overtaking our Boxing Day sales, our post-Christmas sales period that we've traditionally had. In the US this year, they're projecting even bigger than that, 10.8 billion in US dollars, which is like almost a 10% increase from what they saw last year. So massive, massive traction around Black Friday in both the UK and the US. And then Cyber Monday as well, which is sort of the Monday that follows the Black Friday weekend, is also expected in the US to be around 13 billion. So even more than Black Friday itself, 6% on the previous year, which I think is pretty wild in terms of the amount we're seeing consumers spend. And in some ways, I think it makes a lot of sense because it's before the Christmas period. A lot of people are shopping in this period anyway, and they may not have been at other points in the year in the same way that people do in the lead up for Christmas. And why would you not wait for a Black Friday sale if you've already sort of got in mind the kind of Christmas gifts that you're going to be shopping for? There is, though, I'm sure you've both seen quite a lot of skepticism around whether prices really are cheaper on Black Friday weekend. One of the big studies that came out back in 2022, well, in 2023, but it was analyzing the 2022 Black Friday figures, was from which was finding that like around 98% of products were not actually cheaper on the Black Friday weekend compared to other points in the year in that sort of surrounding 12-month period. And there was some talk of, not naming any names, brands putting their prices up just before that Black Friday period in the sort of month leading up, so that then they could show it as a certain percentage decrease ready for that Black Friday weekend, which from a business perspective, because there's such a sort of race to be the cheapest, then have the biggest sale, the biggest percentage discount on Black Friday weekend, from everything we were just talking about there's a financial decision that has to be made in these businesses about how extreme you can go before you're just slashing your own profit margins. And is there really any point actually even doing a sale and having your staff come to work over a Black Friday weekend if you've gone so low that the things you're selling are not actually resulting in a good margin for the business, whether that's a immediate margin or whether that's a sort of longer game of hoping that you're going to get repeat customers as a result, more brand loyalty, more engagement from that Black Friday weekend. So I think it's not even surprising to hear that brands might be doing something like inflating those prices just before this time of year in order to cut them down. Um, One of the things that I actually really love about the Black Friday weekend, though, is the campaigns that go on around the brands who decide not to participate in it or decide to participate in a very like alternate kind of way, which I think says a lot about the people inside businesses. And actually, probably one of the best ones I've seen this year for bucking the Black Friday trend has been The Ordinary, who are a client of ours, and they do an annual Slowvember campaign, which when they first came to us, we were quite skeptical about how this worked and what that looked like for their business and whether they were missing an opportunity. And I remember us having some conversations with them around what their team might be doing, but they're very adamant on having what they're calling Slowvember, shopping slowly. Um, this year, they're doing 23% off for that whole November period. And one of the quite quirky things they've done is change some of their website CTAs to shop slowly rather than shop now, which I think is quite a clever idea, and trying to get that message of not panic buying. I think one of the difficulties with this kind of thing is that so many brands are now even expanding Black Friday to be the whole month of November, which makes it difficult to have a campaign that feels like an alternate pushback um, in this sort of area. So one of the really bold statement things that The Ordinary have decided to do this year is actually close their stores and their website on the 29th of November, which is the Black Friday day this year, which I think is quite a statement move to be making. But one of the things they've done that I've loved is pair it with a really funny billboard campaign. And I don't always love billboard campaigns, but I thought this one was great. And it's got little taglines like 50% off the price they made up yesterday. They're sort of making fun of the whole consumer chaos mayhem that's going around on the whole period. So I think that's a really great way for them to decide to discount and make a sale, but also do it a percentage that works for their brand and know how to have a bit of fun as a brand as well. Because I feel like there's a good win for them here with having some sort of sale season without just selling themselves down the river and not being able to compete. Um, I've seen a couple of other brands doing things. Octopus Energy have got quite an interesting one, which they've called Pink Friday. I initially didn't fully get this, but I think it's because the octopus is pink. And this is based on their members having a sort of loyalty scheme type of offering instead, where they're actually rewarding current customers and trying to increase brand loyalty rather than trying to discount and sell heavily to new customers, which I thought was an interesting take on what you want to achieve as a business and whether you can actually use these kinds of events to improve your revenue through actually increasing your brand loyalty. And they've done a few, like, little bits and pieces, like having free movie nights, free popcorn, that kind of thing. Nothing quite as groundbreaking, I don't think, as what we're seeing from The Ordinary, but a nice perspective nonetheless. Whereas on the reverse, probably we've all seen brands like this. Tala is one of the brands that I follow who are doing quite a lot in the social space, and they've gone completely opposite, super hard on Black Friday with loads of run, don't walk. Yeah, walking. That's The Ordinary are walking. Tala are running for the sales and just building massive social hype, even to the point of creating like a closing the site, creating an early access sign up on email so people feel like they're getting in there exclusively just 2 hours before what they're calling like general release, which sounds very generic. So they're actually pushing people into an email funnel to unlock their website just 2 hours before, which is massively, massively pushing on that sort of buy now, purchase now before things sell out type of messaging, a completely different thing to the brands that have gone the alternate direction, like The Ordinary and like Octopus Energy. Um, so just thought it was really interesting how different businesses decide to market around this. And I think the lesson for marketers that I take away from it is deciding what you actually want to achieve as a business. And I think some of that is in terms of your revenue and profit. And some of that is in terms of the marketing messages that you want to put out into the world and how you position yourself as a business and a brand to your consumers too. And probably also to the type of consumers that you're trying to attract in that period too. I don't know if Jess and Tim, you've seen any particularly interesting Black Friday marketing campaigns this year.
Not in particular. I have fallen for a couple, just to get like Christmas presents and stuff. But it almost feels like Black Friday is like marketed itself in a way, in terms of like I'm still, even though I'm in marketing, I'm still falling for like, oh well, this is going to be a better deal, so I should really buy it at this time of year. Um, so I think to some extent it does work, but it's really interesting that a lot of people are like skeptic about it, and I think it probably is quite accurate because when I look at the things I have got a discount on, like, I bought something for my sister and it was like, cool, 20% off. And then it turns out that the postage was a fiver anyway. So it actually worked out that I kind of got free postage. But I do think there are interesting ways that you can play with this, like how The Ordinary have and like how Octopus Energy are. And I think that kind of boils down to maybe the positioning of your brand. Like I know, for instance, Lush very, very rarely has sales on. And they also are kind of outspoken about a lot of issues. So I think if they ran a Black Friday deal, people would be like, that feels a bit strange. Whereas you go to Amazon, if they didn't, you would be confused and maybe a little frustrated if, like, next year, for instance, they chose not to run it and then you missed out on what you felt was good deals. So yeah, I think it's very much about what's in the company's heart and how you kind of align yourself with it. And I don't think one way or the other is bad, but I was very shocked to see actually, do you know the thing that shocked me the most is how Cyber Monday is even more than Black Friday in the US? That really, like, blew my mind. And I know gone are the days of us seeing, like, people well, I say gone are the days, seeing people fighting their way into a Walmart. They do it now for those, Stanley Cups. But so maybe that is seeing a comeback. But I think maybe the Cyber Monday thing is because people are doing so much more online, and so they associate that online shopping with that specific day, even though the whole of November seems to be just deals time now.
I wonder as well about Cyber Monday, how much of that is the doing your homework the night before, where actually brands have ended up extending the Black Friday weekend and having a sort of Cyber Monday cutoff, knowing that people will not necessarily get round to it until the very last moment. But yeah, I also thought it was interesting that the sales were predicted to be so high on the Monday.
I guess there's a lot of tech purchases and might have higher average order value as well. You just need to know what you stand for, don't you? And if you don't have the margin to do massive discounts, you can absolutely still win, either by being seen to be against the whole thing and positioning it against as your moral hatred of overconsumption. Whether or not you actually feel that or not, that's a message that really resonates with a certain group of customers. Or you can do add-ons. Or if you do have the margin to win, or you're saying, right, we're just going to use this as a massive opportunity to get our products out to more people, we're going to try and buy market share by going really discounted, then you can also make that win. I think the point is to have a clear strategy. If you're thinking, wow, we're going to generate loads of sales by offering 5% off because that's all we can afford to do, you're probably wasting your time. And the 5% off might just be better invested in, giving people a free gift or putting out a campaign about why you hate Black Friday and why it's so crazy. I mean, fundamentally, this is like a self-inflicted margin erosion of pull forward of the most important purchasing period of the year for most retailers, right? So I think it's probably one of those where if you asked a lot of retailers, would you just cancel Black Friday and Cyber Monday? I bet a bunch of them would say absolutely yes. But now it's here and everyone feels like they have to participate. So it's just choose your journey and find something that works, and probably speak to your customers as well to see which end of that spectrum they're on. But yeah, I love this as a. I don't think I ever buy anything on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but it's just a great opportunity to watch marketers really go at it head to head. I love it. Let the battle commence.
Beautiful. Yeah, it was really interesting to see how people either go all in or subvert the trend. It's really, really fun. I
The
have a
thing
very mini
Oh,
oh, sorry,
sorry.
go ahead, Charlie.
I was gonna say the thing I find interesting is because everyone is getting involved and like you're saying, all the marketers are going head to head on Black Friday, it's actually very difficult for the consumer to keep up with the number of Black Friday deals and promotions and different things that are going on. And like you, Tim, I don't shop on Black Friday, but the reason I don't is because I find it so overwhelming as a consumer that I would rather just not shop at all during that period. And I wonder if brands continue to go so heavily as they have done, how much of that might cause a switch off. The numbers aren't showing that at all, though. So I think it will be interesting to see in the next couple of years what that looks like. But Jess, take us into your story.
Yeah, I just wanted to say last thing on that is that I couldn't tell you off the top of my head any brands that I like what their actual deals are for Black Friday. I have no idea. I wouldn't know where to start. I would just go to them or get an email from them and hope for the best. But yeah, so my story is actually an update on a story that we chatted about last week, which was to do with the absolute masses of marketing that was happening for the Wicked movie. And I could say marketing, it seems like it was kind of brand deals, very cheap IP being shared with pretty much everyone who would have it, including mac and cheese for products, all the way to like, clothing and things that were pretty much just like replicas from the movie, which kind of got us speculating on, is it too much? Will it actually help the movie succeed? And what will the outcome be? And in terms of that, it's earned the biggest opening day for a film based on a Broadway adaptation in domestic box office history. That is competing with things like Les Mis, Mamma Mia. So it's doing pretty well. It's earned $114 million domestic and 164.2 million worldwide in its opening weekend. And the movie itself actually cost 150 million to produce, but of course we're not including the marketing spend in there. One thing that I will say is it's part one of two. So a lot of the marketing that they're doing now to get people to sit in this movie, I think will pay off for the second half, because it does end on a massive cliffhanger. So people are going to be driven to go see the second half next year, I would say. And the reviews are very, very overwhelmingly positive, including for myself, because I went opening day. I'm in those figures, but I thought it was really fantastic. And I think, I think I would have seen it without all the marketing, but I can imagine there will be people who maybe wouldn't have heard about it, wouldn't even know what it was, who did go based on the marketing, and that's added to this box office. Now, I'm not necessarily saying, as we've seen in the instance of All Plants, that going completely full on, full out, and not really having a target audience is necessarily appropriate in every regard. But again, this is very different because a lot of the marketing for this movie has been stuff you can buy rather than just, ads. Or, stuff where they've invited influencers to have an experience, or a lot of the press tour has been very, very memeable. And I think we're going to continue to get some quite funny viral moments from it, from the movie itself and kind of from the press tour. But yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. Tim, based on our conversation last week, and maybe even Charlie, based on if you've come into contact with this, did you think that it was gonna have a good success based on the marketing strategy? Or maybe you don't care, and that's fine
So,
too.
well, part one, I don't care, but secondly, we in the last episode we compared it to Barbie with the marketing spend and also with the trajectory as shown on Google Trends, and my prediction was that it was going to be nowhere near as big as Barbie as an opening weekend, just based on the trends data. So Google is telling me via the Guardian that Barbie did 356 million on opening weekend. So that's more than double what Wicked has done. And if we compare this to the biggest opening weekends of all time, like Avengers, Endgame apparently 357, Spider-Man's done 260. So I think there's also a bit of marketing sheen here, and that Wicked earns the biggest opening day for a film based on a Broadway adaptation in domestic. This is like Alan Partridge's, number one radio show in this part of North Norfolk, right? I think there is a little bit of a marketing thing there. Now, I do think that they were savvy with their marketing. I think, as we discussed last week, Barbie was loads of collabs with different companies. Wicked seems to be collabs, but where the companies are actually selling stuff. So it's almost like they probably didn't need to pay Lego loads of money for the collab. Lego will probably just happily ride on the coattails of Wicked and sell some more products. So whether these brand deals cost as much as the Barbie stuff would have, I don't know. And I don't know if we'll ever get visibility on that. But I'm going to claim a slight prediction victory, and that we thought it was not going to be as big as Barbie, and it doesn't seem to be anywhere near as big as Barbie. I'm just going to hold space with that.
I
Good
have to
use
say
of the meme, Tim.
this passed me by completely. I'm clearly not in the target audience for Wicked. The thing that I found most interesting about it was how much it absolutely slammed Gladiator 2 on the opening weekend, because they had the same opening weekends, and my circle is very much more the Gladiator 2 side of the cinematic industry, I guess, which only did 55 million in their box office, despite investments of like upwards of 200 million in the actual film production of it. So a stark contrast, I think, between these two different films coming out at the same time, especially where that first Gladiator was such a massive hit in terms of both Hollywood and probably seen as a bit of a classic in film circles, that actually it could just be swept away so easily by a different film that happened to be coming out on the same opening weekend.
Yeah, that is pretty drastic. I have to say I've seen a bit about Gladiator 2, but I haven't really seen as much marketing, but then you can't do the marketing in the same way because it's so different. Like, you're not gonna find Gladiator fans potentially buying the outfits or buying Gladiator themed Rice Krispie treats, or like, Wicked has this kind of benefit, the same as Barbie, where you can use the color scheme from the thing and directly connect that. Barbie has that Barbie pink that's like Pantone Barbie pink that they could just plaster everywhere, almost in the same way that Charlie XCX did with Brat. You could just put Barbie pink. I think they maybe did that for some billboards. I think they did some billboards that were just that Barbie pink, and that was the ad, and you would see it and know. So I think, yeah, Gladiator potentially has less iconic things to use, but I would be interested to see, like, the longevity of it, and maybe it's just potentially people who like Gladiator are more likely to want to watch it at home, for instance, and want to stream it. So we've kind of got this almost different, like, measurement of kind of, will Wicked just go burn really bright for a short time, and then people forget about it until the next movie, and then after that it kind of trails off, and will Gladiator 2 have the longevity of the original? So yeah, it's hard to call it now, but it's really interesting that it was so significantly less than Wicked.
That's brutal. The danger of playing against someone with a huge marketing budget, right? This is like, imagine, I think about all those companies that are competing with all plants, and or if the all plants don't care about their CPAs, whoa, you don't want to compete against someone like that. And if you're going up against Barbie or Wicked and they're just going all out, wow, how brutal to be choosing that weekend to compete. What a shame. Well, there we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, it's
Check your
pretty
schedules,
intense.
people.
Thank you for also bringing us back to reality, Tim, because I'm definitely in the Wicked bubble right now. So I was like, oh, they've done amazing. And I have to say, there has been a lot of movie adaptations of musicals, and quite a few of them performed very poorly. Cats comes to mind. So I think it is still quite good that people are still willing to go and see musical movies. So I will take that as a win.
I mean,
Um,
164 million in a revenue in a weekend. I'm not saying that's bad. Just
It's still
just to
decent,
stage
but
expectations.
it
Fair
didn't
play.
quite catch up to Barbie, which is, yeah, I think Barbie's kind of the benchmark, isn't it, for a lot of, movies like this. So, now it's time to pick our top story, and I'm kind of leaning towards the All Plants story this week because I feel like there's a lot of lessons there in terms of maybe, like, mindset and letting go. So, normally, I would do the marketing manager bit and the tasks that marketing managers could take. But Charlie, would you like to take that off my hands this week?
Yeah, sure. I definitely agree on this all plant story, having a lot of learnings from it. And I think my big lesson for marketing managers from this one is to know your numbers and set your progress marker numbers for what you want to achieve from marketing channels beforehand so that you can make a much more logical judgment call on what your marketing strategy is going to be long term based on what looks like it's working, what looks like it could soon work, and what's definitely not working so that you don't pour your money into a sunken cost black hole fallacy situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, what tasks can business owners take from this story?
Well, I don't want to tell people how to run their businesses, but I think there is a transition at the moment. Maybe some of the default way of growing a business has been to get loads and loads of investment, and we're just going to buy market share, and we'll figure out the numbers later on. And I think it's perfectly viable. There's loads of the biggest companies in the world, pretty much all did that. But I think it's maybe stress testing that against an environment where investment is harder to find, interest rates go up, there's a little bit more conservatism amongst investors, and then making sure that the business model is pivotable if that happens, if it's difficult to get more investment, and of course, making sure that even if you're taking investment and acquiring customers at a loss, that loss is still manageable and that you do have a roadmap and you can see clearly when the business gets profitable because, fundamentally running a loss-making business for many, many years is going to be a very stressful thing to do versus, making profit early and then using that profit to scale. When we look at our clients, it's typically those businesses that are the most durable and long term. The businesses that have been with us for years, growing consistently, they're typically profitable and they chase profitability and they care about profitability and they report profitability to us so that we can track our work against profitability. I just think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if that's the direction that you want to go in, then all power to you. You don't have to chase investment and take on loads of external input. You can build this brick by brick from the ground up using profit if you want to.
Nice. Thanks both. And thank you everyone for joining us on the podcast this week. Don't forget, you can get a free review of your website and marketing at exposureninja.com/review. If you are eligible, not everybody is, you do have to apply. You can also drop us an email at podcast@exposureninja if you have any questions, comments, concerns, any topics you'd like us to chat about. And as always, you can join us next week for more. Thank you so much. Bye.